my name's Crystal Newman, in case you didn't know who I was. I'm the Agile coach for Dealer Inspire. So thank you so much for joining today. We're going to have a good time. Just going to take a deeper look into Agile and go over some of the basics again. I know that we went through an Agile transformation a couple of years ago, and we've been rocking that and adding new things here and there and been doing a really great job. But what I want to do today is just kind of take us back a little bit to some basics. I want to reset and realign on what some of this stuff means. And that way we can all start growing our agile tacticness and be speaking the same language across the house. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. Let's get this thing going. All right. So happy little outline, just to kind of give you an idea of what we'll be covering today. We're going to talk about the Agile philosophies, starting with that, talking about the mindset and the importance of just getting our heads wrapped around Agile and what it actually means, okay? We're going to talk about some buzzwords, talking about things that you're probably hearing around the house, and maybe sometimes you're like, what the hell does this mean? We're going to go over that and make sure all of that is starting to make sense. We're going to go through some Agile frameworks as well. Right now, I think everybody knows what Scrum is, and we're used to hearing that buzzword, but there's actually more to the story than just Scrum. So we're going to go through that. Also, digging down on some estimation techniques that are used in various types of Agile teams. Another buzzword has been story points, but that's also not the only option. So we'll go through some of that. And then the really fun thing is going to be digging in on the differences between Agile for software and Agile for business, because it's really fun because Agile is actually for the entire enterprise, not just software development. And that's a common misconception in Agile transformations. Next, we're going to dig in on retrospectives a little bit. It seems like this is a concept that's missed around some teams. So we're going to talk about retrospectives, how to facilitate them, and why, why they're so critical and important. I'm going to show you some example workflows, also example cadences for times that you could meet up together for planning and syncs, and then we'll close out the party. So that's the deal. That's what we're doing. All right. So first and foremost, the Agile Manifesto. I know we hear about this and we've talked about this a lot, but I want to really hone in because this is the mindset. This is the philosophy, okay? When you hear us talk about the Agile Manifesto, Agile is not Scrum, right? I think we have a common misconception there. Scrum is actually Agile. So Agile is the mindset, and it's all based on these philosophies here, okay? Talking about individuals and interactions, working software, customer collaboration, and responding to change, right? That's a big one because at any given time, we need to be working on the most important thing to our customers, to our business. And so it's important for us to be able to get to an efficiency where we're able to adapt when changes happen and quickly pivot without a ton of chaos, right? So we'll get into that a little bit more later. But it's important to understand that while the items on the top, right up here, that's what Agile considers to be the most important things. Everything underneath that comes second. It's not that they don't matter. We still need tools, we still need process, we still need documentation, but they just aren't as important as the other things, right? So like customer collaboration, if you can have a relationship and a partnership with that customer, that is way more important than contracts and red tape and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, just sign that, but let's go talk, So that's what the Agile mindset is all about. And we all have to get our minds wrapped around that together. Then we talk about frameworks and how we want to do it and all that jazz. All right. So keeping to that same tone, going into the 12 Agile principles. All right. I'm not going to read all of these to you because we only have a certain amount of time. And this slide could get real crazy with our time box if I try to go through every one. But just as I'm giving you a summary, just kind of glance over the 12 of these. Try to see like what's the common message here, right? The 12 Agile principles are crucial to adopting the Agile mindset, okay? It's basically taking the manifesto, the large high-level idea, and breaking it down into these 12 pieces because these are all the little fibers that matter the most. So a summary to this is basically Agile is we are very customer-centric. Okay, it's all about having the customer at the middle of what we're doing and making sure that we're delivering iterative value to them. Okay, iterative meaning in some kind of cycle. Okay, whatever, if it's a week, if it's 2 weeks, if it's a month, whatever. But as long as we're delivering value iteratively and then getting that feedback from the customer and then delivering a new value in the next iteration, right? Another summary to this is it's all about collaboration. Let's get out of the silos. If you're making decisions in a silo like this, then it's not collecting the overarching agile business path, right? So any types of things that we're deciding together need to be collaborated, non-siloed, so that we're all approaching those value streams together, okay? Another last summary here is about self-organized teams, okay? Want to make sure that the teams doing the work, okay, this is important, so take this home with you. The teams doing the work, they are the ones that are going to estimate, they're the ones that are going to commit to what can be done, and they'll be the ones to tell us and inform us, you know, hey, this is too big, or hey, this needs to be broken down, or hey, we can't build this till we fix that, or whatever. So it's important to remember that the teams know what they need to do, and they're going to know best how to do it within their core set of team. So it's important to always be listening to those things when you hear them. Okay. Retrospective is another summary to this, but I'm going to get into that in a new slide. So just hold on for that one. All right. I don't see a lot of chat or questions. I'm trying to check that as we go. But I've got the chat open. Let me know if anybody needs me to stop or slow down. Happy to do it. All right. So digging in on the buzzwords, right? We've been hearing buzzwords for the last 2 years, talking about, you know, daily scrums, talking about story points, and we got Jira boards, now we got Trello, we got the train. But I feel like a lot of us are kind of sitting around and we kind of get it, but it's like, I still don't really get how all this comes together, all right? So let's unpack that and do that now. All right. Agile, okay, this concept of Agile, it's the umbrella, all right? Agile is the umbrella that contains the manifesto, the principles, the mindsets. So let's just grasp that. That's what Agile is, okay? It's the philosophy, the mindset. It's all about thinking about the customer, delivering value iteratively. Now, underneath that umbrella, there's multiple frameworks, okay? And this is language. This is language I'm using too to help kind of like get us all talking the same, right? Underneath the Agile umbrella, there's many frameworks that teams can use to do the work, okay? Based, depending on a multitude of factors, how big the team is, how big the project is. So it just, you'll need, you know, collaboration, right? To kind of determine what's the best framework for your team. But these are just some of the ones, right? So obviously we know about Scrum, because Scrum, Scrumban, and Scrum XP are hybrids. They continue to be the most common frameworks used by most Agile organizations. So that's Scrum, Kanban, XP, or a combination of those together, right? Isn't that fun? Did you know we could do Scrumban or Scrum XP? Because you can. And then there's also SAFe. We remember that, right? SAFe is also an Agile framework. It's scaled Agile. That's where the Agile release train comes from. But see how that's just a framework. It's a framework of how we do the work and how we deliver the value iteratively under those Agile concepts, right? There's scaled Scrum, which is a little bit less than SAFe, but it's just for like a group of Scrum teams working on a common project. And yes, there is Crystal. There's a framework named Crystal. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a second, but that's always fun for me. I want to crystallize this thing. All right. Okay. So as we said, Scrum, that's what we're using most around the house, right? We all know about that. That's the development teams are using it, all of that. It's best for teams working on large projects or features that need to be broken down into smaller chunks and delivered to the customer for feedback. So when you hear things like sprint, right, story point estimations, all of that is prescribed for the Scrum framework. So I want to make sure that that stays clear, okay? So when you hear us talking about Kanban, okay, which is what I'll get to in a second, that's another Agile framework. It just cooks a little bit differently than Scrum, right? So some of the Scrum basics, you know, even if you think you kind of know, I want to make sure that this Scrum understanding sticks to you because you're going to see how it differs from some of the other Agile frameworks. But you know how our Scrum teams are working. They plan around sprints. We're rocking 2-week sprints around the house right now. The sprint plan is determined based on the team's historical velocity, all right? And the velocity is just the average number of story points that they've completed over the last 4 to 7 sprints. It's just an average. But when we talk about velocity, it's the number of story points. When they estimate the work and they give it a story point estimation, their velocity is now how many story points did they complete, right? So it just, some of these things hopefully will tie in the understanding of the concepts. Best practice for Scrum, okay, this is something else, is to leave the sprint plan untouched until the next iteration. We all feel the pain points around that. Sometimes it's not always possible to leave the sprint plan untouched because we have critical requests coming in from the client, and there has to be an adjustment and a pivot. The thing to understand, though, is that a team only has a certain capacity of availability to do work in a certain time frame, right? Kind of a simple equation there. So if you have to add a new priority into the sprint plan, another priority is going to have to come out to give room for that. So that's important to remember, that it's totally okay to have changes. We're going to be ready to pivot, but you just have to remember that that will mean that another priority has to come down or go somewhere else because this team only has that level of capacity. So it's really cool to kind of understand these things so that when we start hearing no, or like, hey, we can't do this, or hey, we can't get this done, there are reasons why. There are definitely reasons why, and impacts too, if we actually, shake that tree too much. Okay. Yeah, so welcoming changes to requirements after receiving customer feedback. The sprint review is critical. Okay. So if you're not attending sprint reviews for your teams that you need to keep up with, I highly recommend it. It's a great place to dig in on the features being built and to talk to the team and the product owner about that for your questions, any of those things that you need. And just remembering too that we'll get feedback from the product owner and the stakeholders and whoever. And then if something needs to improve or change, well, we plan for that and we do that in the next iteration, right? So that's kind of how Scrum is cooked right there. Getting into Kanban, okay, I want you to start really knowing what these sound like and mean, because you're going to start hearing them more across the house as we implement these frameworks within other Agile teams. But Kanban is better for teams that have a constant change in priorities. Okay, so it's for teams that don't require sticking to an iterative plan like Scrum does. Kanban is more for those maybe support requests coming in could do that. Other types of teams, but we can dig in on that together if you're interested in adapting those methods. But basically, they can still commit to feature development, right? It just has to be loose. Those commitments have to be loose because with Kanban teams, everything is changing every day. It's not able to just stick to 2 weeks. We're going to go do this, right? It's better for smaller work items like enhancement or support requests, but also great for business teams that are just getting started with Agile. I'm going to do a little shameless plug right there, right? Is that if you're just getting started, Kanban is a really nice way to kind of come out of the gate, get your feet wet and get your feelers for how it's going to feel. And then you can start adding a little bit more structure if you decide to go the Scrum route or so forth. Kanban is all about visualizing the workflow, but we use that in Scrum as well with the Kanban board. It still requires daily syncs with value managers, accepting changes to priorities, and it's important to reprioritize and pivot so that we're always working on the most important thing. Limiting work in progress so that we can ensure things actually get done. If you don't limit work in progress, you can end up with like 40 tickets in progress and nothing ever gets completed because you're always context switching, because of those priorities shifting. So you got to limit that work in progress number so you always are working on the highest priorities. I just skipped ahead and I don't know how to go back, but that was basically it on Kanban. Yeah, so we'll dig down on that a little bit more in a second. Going to SAFe, you guys already know about. I've done a full-on training regarding this. I'm happy to break it down more with anyone that's interested. But basically, SAFe is definitely for scaling Agile across an enterprise. Okay, it's not just for scaling Scrum teams. Like we've done the product Agile release train, but it can get bigger than that, right? If you're going to scale Agile across the whole enterprise, and I think that is our hope here. So if we have all of our teams across the enterprise rocking with these Agile methods and themes, then we're all going to be speaking the same language and staying aligned to that higher level company vision. That's what this ultimately does. Okay. Just a quick rundown of this. SAFe collects multiple Agile teams and forms. It creates an Agile release train. You can have multiple Agile release trains. Then there's a solution train and all of this. So it becomes a really big thing. It's still an iterative approach. Like, we have Scrum teams rocking the Scrum framework within the Agile release train. So they have 4 sprints and our big PI, which is 2 months, right? And that's how it all kind of rolls up. And the measure of success for this is around our PI commitment accuracy and the business value delivered. So that's one thing. And then like with Kanban, sorry, I'm going to go back just a second. I figured out how to do that. With Kanban, the measure of success here is around cycle times and throughputs. Cycle time, you're going to hear that, is how long it takes to get the work from in progress to done. And throughput is just simply how much work was done and delivered, at the end of your cycle, right? And then just real quick for Scrum, the measure of success for Scrum is around scope balance and commitment accuracy. Scope balance is important for Scrum because you're supposed to leave that plan untouched, right? So you're trying to start with a solid plan at the front of your sprint and then try not to touch it for 2 weeks so that they can actually deliver that value. So if the scope increases, like we had to add more stuff, then that's something we want to just always be looking at. So lots of cool ways to measure success here, but ultimately it's just it's telling a story and painting a picture for areas of improvement and so forth. All right, so just to show you too, not sure if anyone's ever heard of these before, but there's more Agile frameworks. It's not just Scrum and Kanban and SAFe. There's XP, which is extreme programming, FDD, which is feature-driven development, DSDM is dynamic system development method, and then, like I said, there is Crystal. And Crystal's fun because it's all about people and just kind of letting them interact and work the way that they need to. So it is similar to Scrum. It just removes some of the rigidity around how they're doing the work and just totally leaves it with the team. No scheduled meetings or anything. It's just more for advanced teams that are already used to working that way. Okay, so that's the deal with frameworks, right? So now we understand that there's Scrum and Kanban and XP and feature-driven and all these different methods that can be used under the Agile umbrella, all right? So it's not just Scrum. I hope that point is driven home. Okay, Agile estimation techniques. One of the things that you hear us always talking about are story points, maybe even t-shirt sizes, because we're using those as well. I'm just not sure if we're talking about them a lot across the house, but the development teams know all about that. So in Scrum teams, they are prescribed by estimating story points, okay? And there's reasons for that. We can get into it another time. But Scrum is where the team is working on user stories for the features they're building. So they're going to estimate, not based on time, just to drive this home, story points should never be 3 equals 3 hours, 1 equals 1 hour, 5 equals 5 hours. It should never, ever, ever be cooked that way. So story point estimates are to get the level of understanding of the effort for that story. And it encompasses four concepts into that, 4 factors. And that is scope, how big the job is, the risk, and risk would be around how much of the system does it touch? How much could go wrong? How much testing are we going to have to do? Is there a risk that the PR is going to come back 100 times for us to do corrections? If there's risk like that, it should be a higher story point estimate because it's going to take more time, more people, right? And then also complexity, how hard it's going to be, and also uncertainty, because as we know, sometimes we don't always have every piece of cooked detail to get started, but we can still get started and just estimate a little higher for that level of uncertainty that might increase the scope of the work. So just a quick little training on story points there, right? There's a deeper dive I can do with teams if they decide to estimate in this way. So just reach out and let me know if you want to try that. A way to get there though, other ways Agile teams use estimation is through t-shirt sizes. Gives a very high level view if you just want to kind of like go real quick down a backlog and get an idea for how big or small something is. They also can set thresholds. You got the t-shirt sizes here, right? But they also set thresholds. So a small would be any story that's 1 to 3 story points. A medium could be anything from 5 to 8 story points, etc. So there's some incorrect story point values here because I got this off the internet, so don't pay attention to those. Story points are based on the Fibonacci sequence. So you got 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, etc. So like 16, 6, those are not story point values, so don't use those. Whenever we see those values, it's like, what is this? So that's what story points will be for. Excuse me. But then there's also the bucket system. It's kind of like story pointing, but better for bigger teams that have a lot of items to estimate. There's affinity mapping, which is quick and dirty for visualizing estimations and a large backlog of items. And then there's dot voting. To be honest with you, some of these concepts could be combined. You know, if you dig in on them and study them a little bit, there's a lot of similarities between them. So packing some of those concepts together can make a very powerful estimation engine for you and your teams, depending on how your rhythms are and how you like to work. But the point is that regardless of what kind of Agile team you are, there are multiple ways to estimate your work and get an idea of the capacity your team has to deliver value over a certain time. Okay, so it's not just about story points. You got other options in there as well. All right, beautiful. Okay, so the thing about uh, us at DI and the difference between software versus business and how we're going to rock Agile, right? Software is already doing it. The engineering teams, they're already running scrums. They know what to do, right? Because it's very common with software development teams, as I already mentioned. It's becoming more common with enterprises and businesses scaling Agile and adopting these methods, but it's less common here, right? And that's why we're starting to talk about this now. But I wanted to make it clear that Agile is not just for software development. Agile, the umbrella, the concepts, the mindsets, all that, right? That's for the entire company. And if you can get the entire company thinking in that way and talking with that language, everything starts running like a well-oiled machine, just like this. You know, you're going to have bumps in the road. Sure. You're going to have kinks in the process. Absolutely. But that's why retrospectives are so important. I'll dig into that in just a second. But the thing about all of us being agile, if we're going to say we're an agile organization, right? That means that we're all customer centric. Okay, because that's what Agile is all about. That's what SAFe is all about. That's what the Agile release train is all about, being customer centric. Okay, now the thing is though, is that as we know, customers, they come in with their requests, they talk to the people that they talk to, but then that information has to disseminate down and around to all the teams that are going to consume and absorb the work and deliver the work, right? So it encourages partnerships and collaboration, right, over the contracts. And everyone is using the same language across the house. So if we come together and we say, hey, the customer really wants this and that, and by this certain time, and then this is saying, okay, well, we've estimated it, it's going to be this size or this many story points or whatever. Here's when we can get it to you. And then you have this conversation. But then if we all understand each other, then we're understanding why no is happening, why we can't actually deliver that in the time frame that's being requested. But the other part about Agile, okay, let us not miss this, is that the point is to be delivering some type of value in iterative cycles, okay? So if we have a request from a customer, it doesn't have to be fully cooked, okay? It doesn't have to be like fully baked and ready, to go out before we can deliver the value. Honestly, that's too much of a waterfall approach. If you don't know what that is, go Google it or something, because I'm not going to spend time on waterfall in this Agile presentation. One of the things I love about Agile the most is that you can take an idea from a customer, break it down and say, you know what, we can't deliver the full tamale in that short amount of time, but here's what we can give you. We can give you this landing page, or we can give you this component, or we can give you that, get you rocking, get feedback from you, and continue to build and enhance as you go. And then over time, they always had it in their hand. They always were able to touch the whatever it was, play with it, be testing it and giving us that feedback. And you get that customer loop going. It's going to build your relationships. It's going to make them trust us. They're going to see that we're always trying to deliver some value, even if it's not the big thing. And then eventually they will get the big thing, and it'll be wonderful because we stayed close and collaborative and customer centric the whole way there. Okay, so that's the point. We're all agile. We're one team, one cars, right? That's the new concept we're going towards. So if we can all start adopting some of these mindsets and methods, it'll just make things so much better and so wonderful for us and our customers. Okay. Now, if you're a business team, software teams kind of already know how this works, right? When you get started. But if you're a business team and not really sure where to start, the first step, first and foremost, is you want to have a retrospective. Okay, this is an event that's prescribed in the Scrum framework, but it's something that I recommend every single team do this. Okay, and it's up to you when. The Scrum teams do this every 2 weeks after a sprint, but it's up to you and your team how often or how not often you want to do it. But set up a retrospective, and you can do this anyway. I set up an example from like a table, just a table view that you could do in Confluence, very simple. You could set something up in Jira, Trello, however you want to cook it. But you're basically trying to find out what are the things that are working, what's going well, because we don't want to touch those things maybe, right? What's not going well? Let's find the pain points. Let's figure out what really sucks. What are the things we want to change? Where are the blockers? Where are the kinks in the system? And it's supposed to be a very open, collaborative, candid conversation. It's never personal, it's never attacking or pointing fingers or whatever. It's all of us, right? It's all of us wrapping our minds around being customer centric in an agile way. And retrospectives are meant to satisfy our approach of relentless improvement. Okay. So it's never about a person or anything like that. It's always just about the process or the step or whatever is in there that we can like tweak and work on to make better. Okay. So just kind of remembering that you want to be open, you want to be honest, you want to really call out what's not working and what's causing the problem, and then come up with the ideas and the solutions. You know, what are the things we need to change? When do we want to implement it? How do we want to roll it out? So there's lots of things to do in there. Also, if you've ever had a multi-bean salad, absolutely disgusting. I just can't even express how just horribly disgusting it is. So yeah, let's deal with that. All right, another thing after that is once you have your retrospective, now you've got ideas and solutions, right? You're ready to start rocking and rolling and putting some of this into place. The next thing is set up a cadence, right? Set up a planning and a sync cadence for you and your teams and whoever else is important to you. Okay. I put a drum line here just in case people aren't aware, but I played snare drum in college on a drum line like that. And we had what was called a cadence. And it's legit the rhythms or the music, or whatever, that we had to play at certain times and events. You know, so at every football game, at every practice, we had to rock out our cadence as the drum line. So I happen to love that word. But the cadence ultimately means it's a repetitive sequence or flow of events. So you want to get you and your teams used to some type of a meeting. All right. It is going to be different for every team and every value stream working agile together. So, like, for example, the product art, just to give you an example of what we do, like we have a Scrum of Scrums meeting, which is our daily sync, but we do that twice a week. So it's not every day, but like they are doing daily syncs with their teams every day. And you're just basically trying to find out, what did we work on yesterday? Everything cool? Okay, awesome. What are we working on today? What's the highest priority today? And then you want to talk about blockers, anything in the way, anything that's going to make a risk of something not getting done. You're talking about that at your daily syncs, right? The other thing is planning. So planning and prioritization have to be a part of this, right? You got to talk about what's the most important thing to be working on at a given time, and then come together and plan that out, right? And it's about what order things should be in, what's the capacity, what's the size of the work, right? The estimations, the effort size, and who's going to own it. Who's going to own it? How big is it? When is it delivered? You'll find all of those answers in these cadenced planning meetings, okay? Scrum calls them specific things like refinement. That's where we refine the backlog and we talk about, you know, the details and the tickets, make sure the team has an understanding of what to build. And then we also have sprint planning, right? But you can take this and set up the recipe for whatever type of agile team you have. So you don't have to call it a daily scrum if you're not a scrum team, right? Scrum teams have daily stand-ups, which is a part of Scrum. But if you're an agile team doing something else, it's just a daily sync, right? So you don't have to call it exactly what Scrum is calling it, because you might be rocking a different framework a different way. So just want to point that out. Okay.